All right, welcome back to Rob Schmitt Tonight. The White House sending the DOJ after Republican states like Alabama, which have made it illegal for doctors to prescribe puberty blockers or hormones to minors. Today, MSNBC's Jen Psaki, as I call her now, described gender reassignment surgery and medication to change a child's gender as life-saving for children and teens. Take a look.
But Alabama's lawmakers and other legislators who are contemplating these discriminatory bills have been put on notice by the Department of Justice and the Department of Health and Human Services that laws and policies preventing care that healthcare professionals recommend for transgender minors may violate the Constitution and federal law. To be clear, every major medical association agrees that gender-affirming healthcare for transgender kids is a best practice and potentially life-saving.
No messaging on the myriad of cases of confused young kids who end up seriously regretting these kinds of decisions once they grow up and mature a little bit. The idea of gender in this country is changing. It's really disappearing fast. Men, women, it's all just a blur now. Men can now get pregnant. Men can menstruate, they tell us. Just a few years ago, all of this was predicted by conservative Dennis Prager, and he was laughed at by the host, by the guest, and by the audience on Real Time with Bill Maher. Let's take you back just a couple years ago.
To say that men can menstruate is a lie, and that is what is said.
Wait, where did that who is saying this? You're talking about a very small percentage.
Oh, really? Then how do you allow men, biological men, to run against women in the races in Connecticut?
So Maher, who actually is pretty common sense on issues like this, is saying you're talking about a very small percentage. Well, today, 3 years later, you're hearing it from the White House. Left-wing indoctrination of our kids is the new agenda, and it is ramping up quite quickly. Kids are being taught that this kind of nonsense is normal, taught to question their sexuality at a very young age. White kids are being trained to identify as oppressors. Black kids are now trained to be perpetual victims. We have a mess on our hands. This week, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem signed an executive order banning the teaching of critical race theory in K-12 schools. And the governor joins us tonight to talk more about all of this. Thank you so much for coming on. It's good to see you again. I want to start with grooming, which is this phrase right now that infuriates liberals, this new phrase. And I think it infuriates them because it hits a nerve. When you see the way that a lot of these teachers have reacted and a lot of people have reacted to this Florida bill, what are your thoughts?
You know, it's interesting to me. They will take virtually any topic and twist it into something that's just simply not true about the policy that's being enacted. Down in Florida, you're seeing it with that piece of legislation. In South Dakota, we've seen it in response to our banning of critical race theory being taught in our public school system. So, you know, it's an agenda that they have to remake this country, and it's going to be really super important that people go out there and do their own homework, actually read these bills, understand what they're doing out in the state that they live in to make sure they really understand the kind of agenda that the left is using to twist the narrative. Absolutely. You've just signed an anti-CRT bill in South Dakota. Tell us about that. Well, we have a bill that passed through our legislature that dealt with our university system. I had brought a bill that also banned CRT in our public schools. My legislature did not support that, so I did an executive order that made sure that we were going to have an honest and true history taught in our public schools throughout the state of South Dakota, and that people wouldn't be treated differently or discriminately based on their sex, their race, their color. That they would continue to get equal opportunities and be taught that in the schools here in South Dakota. Yeah. In February, you signed a law banning transgender athletes from participating in women's and girls' sports. I personally have been very shocked that there has been so much noise around this, and not just yours, but countrywide, the whole nation. People are so offended by the idea that somebody that was born a man cannot just go into female sports and just dominate that sport. And I want to know if you think, because it seems to me that is so common sense and is so bipartisan and just basic common sense. Do you think that a lot of the outrage over this is being manufactured in some way? Well, I don't hear it from people out in my communities. They're very concerned about fairness. They're very concerned about keeping Title IX and the opportunity for girls and women to be successful when it comes to sporting events. That's why I proposed and the legislature passed the strongest bill in the country to protect girls' sports. And overwhelmingly in the state of South Dakota, people appreciate it and support it because they recognize that it is about fairness and it is about going forwards, not going backwards, and creating a situation where you just are allowing males to compete, biologically gifted males in women's sports, and creating a situation where girls just can't be successful.
Yeah, it's very true. Last night, you delivered a speech at the Reagan Library in California, slamming the Biden administration. Let's take a listen to a bit of that.
Biden continues to rely on Russia to broker a nuclear deal with Iran while militias launch rockets at Americans in Iraq. Biden is also asking the dictator in Venezuela to pump more oil at the same time that he muzzles American energy producers. It is absurd. While our actions as leaders are far-reaching, so are the words that we use. The way we talk to each other has consequences. My advice to the Republican Party is to get over yourself.
Advice to the Republican Party is to get over yourself. Expand on that a little bit.
Well, I think that at times our party refuses to talk to people that we disagree with. We either blow them up in conversations or jump on Twitter and attack, where this country is desperate for civil conversation and debate around policies. I think people are wondering who they can trust for the truth, who can they trust to defend their freedoms, and that's the Republican Party. It always has been our party. And starting those conversations again, listening to people and visiting with folks that we've been offended by, that we've written off, we need to bring them back into the fold and start building those relationships if we're going to win the hearts and minds of America and make sure that we are protecting this country and our liberties.
Yeah, widen the base. Absolutely. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, thank you for taking the time. Good to see you.
You bet. Have a wonderful day.